Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar of the JoinHealth 2024 Spring Series. This is co-organized by the Health Cluster Portugal and the IT Health, herein represented by Marta Passadouro. And today's webinar, as in all of this series, we are organizing it in the scope of DigiHealth PT, which is the Portuguese Digital Innovation Hub for Health that aims at supporting digital transformation in the healthcare sector. So first of all, I would like to thank you for being here, all of the participants, but also thank our speakers today, who are Sandra Balseiro, João Quintas, Célia Ludovino, and Ana Abreu. And they will guide us through the complex regulatory requirements for medical devices today. So the program of this webinar today consists of three main parts. So in the first one, we will hear from Sandra Balseiro from IPN, Instituto Pedro Nunes, about the essential steps for CE mark. Then João Quintas, also from IPN, will present a case study on the technical and usability requirements according to the MDR. And in the third part, we will have Célia Ludovino from BHL Medical and Ana Abreu from Kineticus Health, who will share their success stories with CE marking. So once again, thank you all for sharing your experience with us today. So after the two first parts, so the more technical parts, we will have a Q&A. So we will encourage you to leave your comments and questions in the Q&A tool. And before I hand it over to Sandra, just to let you know that the presentations of this webinar will be available to those of you who requested by filling in the survey that we will share after the webinar. And also that the recording of this webinar will be available on the Health Cluster Portugal's YouTube channel. So moving now to the first presentation of this afternoon from Sandra Balseiro. Sandra Balseiro is an expert in regulatory affairs for medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, and she's the leader of regulatory unit at the Instituto Pedro Nunes Laboratory of Automation and Systems. So Sandra has successfully assisted over 100 companies navigate the regulatory process for their medical devices. Sandra, thank you so much for your contribution today, and the screen is yours.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm going to share my screen now. First of all, thank you for the invitation for me to do this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to make a little bit an overview about the steps that are essential to get the CE mark. And first of all, the first thing that companies have in mind is I have an idea, I have a project, what now? It is an IVD, is it another product? So this is the first question that companies should answer before going through the regulatory path. Being an IVD and an IMD, it's essential to be aware that the regulatory path related to these kind of products are really, really difficult, and they have a lot of requirements that we should be aware in order to put these products into the market. So the first question answering here is MD or not an MD? That is the real question. That is the real doubt for you as a company to understand if we have to put our product under the strictly regulatory path of MD medical device and IVD. So answering yes to this first question, is an MD or an IVD, I have milestones regarding the CE mark that I have to go through in order to put this product into the market. Related to these milestones, we have several steps, and I'm going through all of these steps, getting a little bit of a review, an overview about these steps that you should perform before you put these products into the market. The first step is device qualification and classification. This is an essential step for getting an overview of his product that is related to the medical device regulation or the IVD regulation. Second step is to get a checklist of general safety and performance requirements. The third step is to understand which standards, which norms, which guidelines that we should follow in order to accomplish all of these requirements and getting the product compliant with the MDR or IVDR. Device testing and verification, clinical evaluation, risk assessment, and technical documentation compilation and TMS definition and implementation are all of the steps that we should follow in order to get the CE mark. So, what are the essential steps? What is the meaning of qualification and classification? The first step is qualification. Qualification is the step that is the first one and is the most important for me as a manufacturer to answer in order to see if my product will be under the medical device regulation or the IVD regulation. What is a medical device? A medical device is a product that should be used in humans. Okay, so this is the first thing that we will be aware, that the medical device is only for human use. And the second important rule that we have to accomplish this is these products have a clear clinical purpose. These two steps are essential for me to qualify my product as a medical device. And after being answered yes to these two requirements, I should be aware that if they have a pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic means of action, they could be a pharma product, not a medical device product. So this is the first step for me to qualify my product and put it under the medical device regulation. Regarding the IVD, the same thing should be done. They have similar procedures to qualify the product as an IVD. So an IVD must be for human sample use. So if it's for animals, for instance, is not an IVD and could not be an IVD. And these tests should have a clinical value. Okay, they have to have importance in regarding the diagnostics of a disease or screening of a disease. This should be very, very important for us to qualify the product as an in vitro diagnostic medical device. After doing that, and the answer is yes, I have to be aware that the intended use is critical for me to qualify my product, because there are several products that are for borderline, and according to my market overview and my market purpose, I could put it under the medical device regulation or the IVD regulation. But if I have a different strategy in terms of market access, I can put it not under these two regulations and put it under a different one. So I have several products that could be borderlines and could be qualified at different regulation or no regulation at all, depending on the intended use that I, as a manufacturer, give to my product. So this could be really important to put food supplements, cosmetic, hygienic products, PPAs, even software and applications, mobile application, could be interesting examples of this kind of product that, according to my market overview and selecting my market assessment, I can put it or not under the medical device regulation. That is why the MDR and IVDR is critical for us to define properly the intended use or the intended purpose regarding these two, and these intended use and this intended purpose can lead me to different regulatory roadmaps. Another question that normally manufacturers made us is this could be could any kind of non-medical device be under the MDR scope? The answer is yes. Several products that are not medical devices don't have, because they don't have a clinical purpose, are under the MDR. And these kind of purposes are described in Annex 16, okay? And there are several groups. The most important ones are here. There are more. But for instance, the subcutaneous fillers, the equipments that have lasers, the removal of products that help persons to remove the adipose tissues, the contact lens that have not a clinical purpose, is only for changing the color of the eye, can be under the medical device regulation. And this is very new, and the directive doesn't get requirements specific for this kind of products, but under the MDR, we have several products that even if they don't have a clinical purpose, they have to fulfill with the MDR requirements. The second step, after I qualify my product, even if it's not a medical device, but are under the Annex 16, I have to classify my product. This is the second step, because according to this classification, I have different regulatory paths to follow. The classification for MD are described in Annex 8, and we have 4 classes like the IVD that have changed also in the IVDR, and we have 4 classes for MD and IVD. For MD, we have class 1, class 2B, class 2, class 2A, class 2B, and 3. And the first one, the class 1, is the only one that we don't need a notified body, okay? The other ones we need. Of course, we have some class 1s that have specific issues, like the class 1 sterile that we have to have a notified body for that part, but in general, class 1 is the only one that we don't need a notified body access. And for the IVD, we have also 4 classes. This is very different because in the IVDD, the directive, we only have list A and list B. And for the IVR, we have the same classes like the MD, and they are class A, B, C, and D. As the medical device, class A is the only one that we don't need the notified body integration. So after we classify, I'm going to see if I need or not a notified body. I have a different strategy in terms of regulatory path, okay? And this is the second step that is very important. How can I classify my medical device? Of course, according to the Annex A, as I told you, we have 4 classes, and we have examples of these classes in this stratification and the interpretation of the rules that are given for the MDCGs, specific ones, and we can put the products under this classification according to the risk for the user. As I told you also, the only one that is self-declared that we don't need notify the body is class 1 and class A. Okay. The third step is to check the general safety and performance requirement checklist. This is a checklist that is according to Annex 1, and in Annex 1 of MVs or IVDs, we have all of the general requirements that we need to be aware in order to comply our product with these requirements and put it into the market. Even the ones that are included to Article 5, that we don't have a manufacturer, it's only for medical devices and IVDs that are put it in the market by medical facilities, we have to follow this Annex 1. This is very, very important for you, and is the third step that is very important for you to check. What this step gave us the indication of applicable requirements that are linked to our product, and they guarantee the safety and the performance of our product, and then we can put it under the MDR and IVDR and put it in service for the users. And also in this checklist, we are going to justify all the requirements that are not applicable. That is why I think is the third step, because here we are going to be aware of the requirements that we don't need to borrow. Okay? The ones that are not applicable to my products, and then I can skip them. This is very important for us to give us an idea about the requirements that you should follow in order to put it into the market. So the fourth step is linked to the third one, because in the checklist we have to check which standards are linked to the requirements in order to fulfill the requirements. There are a lot of guidelines, there are a lot of standards that we should follow, and they are specific to products that we are intended to put it into the market. So we should consider the requirements of and the technical standards in order to comply with them and redesign, develop, test for this. Even for labeling, we have standards and norms that we have to follow in order to put these products into the market. There are a lot of them, as I told you. They are product specific, but normally there are 3 of them that are global and general for all the products, namely ISO 13485, ISO 14971, and IEC 62366. They are the ones that are applicable to all of the medical device and IVD products. So, as I told you, we have a lot of guidelines, we have a lot of standards that we should follow, and normally they are named and listed in several kinds of sources, like the ISO, the IEC, and so on. So we have to check all of these standards and see if they are or not applicable to our product, and then we should, if the ones that are applicable, we should follow in order to submit them as, for instance, testing or only for check if our product follows all the requirements. More than the standards, we have guidelines, and the MDCG are the ones that are very linked and specific for the European market, but we have a lot of other guidelines that we should follow in order to put the product into the market. So we have to check all of these funds in order to be aware of all of the requirements, and then we can follow to the next step. I have an example here. So we have here an example of one of the companies that I asked for getting you an overview about their product process. So normally we make a link about the norm, about the procedure, the internal procedure, and that is one of the steps that we should follow regarding the checklist. The next step is the step 5, and this is one of the most important ones, and the one that the notified bodies are going to see and check and double check. And another company that I asked here to give their example is an example of this, that the notified body is going to check all the requirements of your device verification and testing. So normally we designate this as a preclinical testing, and this is very important for you to follow. And for most of the products is one of the steps that can lead me to not have the obligation of getting a clinical investigation of my product, because I can make the clinical evaluation based on the preclinical testing. And this is very important for you to be aware of. And this is one of the most important steps that you should follow in order to put the product into the market. According to these steps, we have to follow the requirements, see the applicable standards, and identify all the laboratory tests that I should perform to demonstrate my product compliance for MD and IVDs. So I have to check all of the standards that I checked into the previous step and see which ones required laboratory tests for making an evidence that I follow and comply the requirements of these norms. So this is very important. We have, sorry, a lot of testing, and I only listed the most used and that are the ones that normally most of the medical devices have to follow, like biocompatibility, bioburden, usability, that João will going to be making an overview about it also, the shelf life, the transport test, and so on and so on. So we have a lot of tests that we should perform even before I have the clinical investigation and the clinical evaluation. That is the next step that I'm going to talk about. So basically, we have a lot of preclinical testing. Of course, it depends on the product, and it's different between a software, for instance, and another type of products. But we have to be aware that several preclinical testing are important for us to evidence our compliance with the requirements of Annex 1, like biocompatibility, as I told you, the stability, the sterilization if the product is sterile, the software validation if it's a software or have an hardware software, electrical safety, and so on and so on. So we have a lot of tests, and we have to make a list of all of the testing that I should perform before submitting the product to the clinical evaluation, clinical investigation, and before, of course, put it into the market. Clinical evaluation and performance evaluation, if we are talking about the IVD, we are talking about only performance evaluation, are the step 6. And this is also, as I told you, an important step, but the previous one can give us a different roadmap according to the specificity and the accomplish of all the requirements, and we could put the clinical evaluation based on preclinical tests, as I told you. And this is a step that we should perform a report that we identify all the requirements and the clinical benefits of my product, and give us an overview about the link between the clinical benefits, the users, the intended use, and so on and so on. So this is a step that could be performed according to the literature, okay? But some of the products have to have a clinical investigation, so we have to perform a clinical trial before we put this into the market. But most of the products that are not innovative can only be based on literature and clinical evidence that we can be aware doing an evaluation of the scientific inputs and outputs and the market inputs and outputs. Linked to this clinical and performance evaluation, we have the post-market surveillance. That is also important for clinical follow-up. So we have to have all of these data, and we have to evidence that our product comply and is safety enough to put into the market, okay? In this report, we have also to outline the negative data. Okay, this is important to give the positive data, but also it's important to give also the negative data regarding this the product. So basically, the decision about to have an investigation, a clinical trial or not, is depending on the reliability of the evidence that we can check in the literature. So if I have enough data that gave us confidence and evidence to compliance of all of the general safety and performance requirements, I don't need to perform a clinical trial. But if I don't have enough data in the scientific literature, I have to perform a clinical trial to get data for the topics that I cannot have evidence to comply. So this is also very important. The same thing for performance evaluation. We have to have scientific validity, analytical validation, and clinical validation in order to get a performance evaluation report that gave us enough data and to the notified body that I am in full compliance with the general safety and performance requirement and the intended purpose of my product. The seventh step, and I'm almost finished, okay, the seventh step is risk management. After perform all of the testing, seeing all of the standards, getting an overview about the compliance with all of the requirements, I have to establish which risks are linked to my product, if I have all of the controlled risks, and if I have not, if I have a risk beneficial ratio that is positive in order to put my product into the market. Okay, and this is made according to ISO 14971. So, as you know, we have a lot of steps regarding the risk management, and we also have to perform this. Finally, the final step is the step 8, that is technical documentation compilation, or we are going to get all of the outputs of the other steps and put it and compile it within a unique document that is a technical documentation, and this is made according to Annex 2 and 3 of MDR and IVDR. And also, and this is very important, we have to have a quality management system that is implemented according to ISO 13485. After these two major steps, we are sufficient to submit our product to a competent authority if it's a class 1, or to the notified body if it's classes 2, 3, or B, C, and D of IVD. So this is normally the two pillars that we have to be aware in order to get the CE mark. We have to have a technical documentation according to Annex 2 and 3, and we have to have a quality management system. So I'm not going to be more specific about this, but basically we have to have Annex 2 that gave us all the inputs, and Annex 3 that gave us all the inputs that we have to have regarding the post-market surveillance. Once more, two pillars, technical documentation and quality management system, in order to get CE mark. Okay? Finally, one thing more, we have to be aware that the regulatory roadmap, we have to follow it into the beginning of the idea that I told you until the end of the product. Even if I'm marketing it, I have to follow regulation. So thank you for this presentation. I'm going to pass to Patricia in order to proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, for such an informative step-by-step presentation. It was a very comprehensive one. And there are already a few questions from the audience in the Q&A that we'll get to after João's presentation. So without further delay, let's dive into the technical and usability requirements outlined in the MDR. João Quintas is the coordinator of the RDT unit at IPN Laboratory of Automatics and Systems, and he's also a research associate at the Artificial Perception for Intelligent Systems and Robotics of Institute of Systems and Robotics from the University of Coimbra. So over to you, João. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. Thank you, Sandra, for your always a very interesting presentation, very complete. And my role here, and I would like to set the stage with this perspective. So as you probably understood from Patricia's introduction, my background is on engineering. So the idea of this presentation will be presenting you with understanding from a technical guy when it comes to the world of regulatory affairs and how this affects the process of engineering itself. So that's also the motivation for this presentation to be called technical and usability requirements according to the MDR, because there are some differences when it comes to developing a process that is aligned with these regulatory requirements. So first, I would like you to contextualize where is your first requirement to look at. So Sandra was referring to the quality management system that you should have in place in your team when you are developing a medical device. And the first document that you should look for some guidelines, or at least for some bearings of what to do, is this ISO 13485. And there is a specific clause there that is clause 7, where you will find some of the requirements that you need to put in place to develop your process of design and development, because it's where it's specifically stated some of the details that you need to take into account when you are developing or when you are doing your product realization. So basically, it's coming from covering all these steps. So in this case, they are not yet fully understood as a process, because what you get from this ISO 13485, it's essentially boxes, okay? So you have to take care of how you take your new products requirements definition, how you plan your design and development, how do you implement your medical hardware or software. So this includes detailing the development stages and taking care of your documentation and appropriate registries of what you are doing. And if you think that you have a very nice prototype and that's it, then you are wrong, because after you're developing, you need to review everything from the beginning. So you need to take care that every step in your development is aligned with the final result and vice versa. So this usually, if you go to the more engineering point of view, this is very, very similar to the V model, and you put it in several cycles. So it becomes kind of a spiral that creates maturity in what you are doing. Then, because you are basically feeding what is a quality management system, you need to track every change that you need to do. So it's not only, okay, I found a bug and then I just go there in the code and fix it. You should document this very well and put the explanation, why are you including changes in the prototype or in the development that you are doing. It all ends with the verification and validation before it can be transferred to your potential client or the final end users. And basically, this is more consistent or aligned with the stages that Sandra was referring to, the testing and the preclinical tests and all of these stages. So there is a step that you need to define in your process on how you do this. So all of these are boxes. So they are not interconnected. At this stage, they cannot be considered a process. So it's your role as part of the engineering team you have to make it a process. And for this, there are some guidelines or some standards that could be applicable. I can share our case here that basically in IPN Lash, we use these three together, depending if we are going to the medical device software or systems in the more generic terms. If you are developing purely software, then you need to comply with the IEC 62304, which basically refers to the entire software lifecycle processes applicable to the medical device software. If you are developing things, material things, devices, digital tools that require hardware, eventually you need to complete a bit your process with the complementary standards that are more applicable also to systems development and systems engineering. Overall, they will take mostly all of the stages that are coherent with the boxes that I showed you before and put it as a process, okay? So essentially, in our team, we converge to, in our practice, we approximate our methodology of developing these products, new products, using a model-based system engineering, which basically translated into overall terms, it's a way of conducting work that instead of having focus on documentation and everything is basically coming to the engineering team through the documentation, we keep a model of our system and then we generate documentation to fulfill the regulatory requirements from this model. And for that, you need a supporting tool that allows you to do this. But in essence, we interpret this clause 7 and put together our design and development process to tick all of these boxes. So essentially, we have from the product definition and realization initiation, which basically gets your project plan, gets the overall idea, starts building on top of the information that you get from your initial end user needs and so on, and starts translating these into formal requirements as known by the engineering team. And then from there, you start building your product architecture design. You start putting the gears on and assemble your prototype in the product construction. You have a prototype already mature enough to go through the verification and validation processes, which typically can be from simple unit tests to integration tests to more complex pilots and field trials approach. And when you have several cycles of these going on, you may be ready to have the product delivery as a final product, okay? So coming to this, and in a very specific part that concerns the product verification and validation and integration, there is this part of usability. So usability, as you probably saw from Sandra's presentation, is one of the requirements that you will need to have to show compliance if you want to get the CE marking. And there is a very interesting discussion, or at least that was even internally to our team, about what is usability. Because when we come from the engineering point of view, we usually refer to usability on only, okay, the person can use the prototype and it likes the prototype, then that's fine. Good. That's not so easy for the medical devices because you need to comply with other definitions associated with usability. And you will find this in this ISO, it's IEC or ISO 62366, which basically have two parts. In the first part, you will have a lot of definitions and the overall approach or overall overview of the usability engineering for medical devices. And in the part two is where you really have the guidelines on how to perform this work. So basically focusing on this second part, you will see a lot of boxes again, okay? One of the very specific things that you will need to take care of usability in medical devices is that this is essentially a risk hazard oriented approach, okay? Instead of, okay, my users like it very much, very easy to use, like, fine. In this case, you will need to see that it's usable in the sense that it's not dangerous and it will not take the user to do wrong things if they are not careful enough. So this is a quite comprehensive document, which if you will develop medical devices, you will need to check on that. In the essence, there are basically two phases for doing this, which I summarized very briefly here in these two boxes. So first, you have what it's called a formative evaluation, and it's called formative because it's assumed that you can do this during the development of your product. So at this stage, you are still at the prototype level. It's not mandatory that you consider your prototype as a final version of it. And what you should do here is conduct some more traditional usability testing, start including some hazard prone scenarios or risk mitigation scenarios, and start testing with this. So at this stage, you don't have a closed product and you are far away from in position to put it to clinical trials, okay? You are still developing the thing. When you are happy with that and you consider your product as complete, then you need to do a second stage of usability that it's called the summative evaluation, which is a much more complex approach. It may be, in some cases, go together with clinical trials. It's not mandatory. You can make it a stepwise approach and focus first on the usability part of your closed product. So it's a closed product, will not have any change whatsoever, okay? So you conduct this usability testing, and then you can do preclinical or clinical trials, and it goes from away a bit from the engineering team to a more clinical oriented approach of validating the solution, okay? So everything together is what will also contribute to what the technical dossier and basically generate evidences that you perform the development according to the guidelines and to the regulatory requirements. So this is exactly the story of this technology that we have been developing in IPN together with the national and international partners. And basically this is essentially a digital tool that has this characteristic where we have developed software and hardware as well, at least integrated some parts of hardware. So this is, in some cases, I put these two on purpose because on the left, we started with an approach where we are focusing on using this technology for cognitive stimulation aspects. It's stimulation. We don't have a particular patient group or a clinical oriented use. So in this case, this technology can be a bit out, it's in the gray zone, okay? But can be still considered not as a medical device. On the right, the same piece of technology with the same or very similar interface, but the sensors are the same, the computational devices are the same, the enclosure is a bit different, but the big difference is that we intended to use with patients with facial paralysis that are rehabilitating from a stroke. This is a medical device, period. Then we start going into the study and classification, as Sandra was guiding us in the previous presentation, on which class it is it class 1, is it class 2A, what it is. And then it's a dialogue that the technical team and the regulatory team have to go through to understand exactly what are the features and functionalities and the use that is intended for this technology. In the end, for this device, we consider to be a class 1 with measurement, but still, as we go into the redevelopment of some of the features, it can suddenly be classified otherwise. So it's, while you are developing, don't think that you have the solution closed, because you can have some functionality that suddenly puts you in a different class. And that's why, as Sandra was saying, it's something that you need to take care from the idea until you take the product out of the shelves, because any change that you include in the development may risk or may change this type of classification. So in short, it's possible. So as to have and to keep a design and development process in place, aligned with the quality management system. In our case, it's certified on this ISO, and we are conducting this work, of course, together with partners, to implement these products that eventually they will reach to the market. But this is a roadmap, right? So it's something that you need to go through and adjust as you go, to make sure that you are aligning and checking all the boxes along the way. And just to finalize, if you are interested in understanding better and in more detail how this is done, we have an EIT Health project going on that is a bootcamp for regulatory pathways, from the regulatory pathways to the market. So we have some vacancies available. If you are interested and if you want to join this interested bootcamp, then you will have the opportunity to have a hands-on on how to do this. So that will conclude for me. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, João, thank you, and Sandra also for giving us this very important pieces of information so that startups can prepare their path to obtain the CE mark. So I have here some questions, and I will start for the latest questions, mostly for João Quintas first. So what should be the minimum number of users to perform usability tests? And if it's not possible to reach that number, what can we do?
That's a very good question. It's a very tricky question, because there is not let's say, an appropriate minimum number. The correct way is to do a power analysis, and you get your minimum number from the target population you are aiming for. This is very important to keep it like that from the regulatory perspective, and to show evidence if you want to go into the clinical effectiveness and so on. Eventually, Sandra could complement this part better, but overall, this is one approach. There is, from the engineering perspective, another interpretation, but it's purely engineering. Okay, don't confuse the things. because there are some publications that apparently found a magic number of 5. But this 5, it's only because eventually you can find like 80% of your bugs and so on from the first 5 users you have. But this is purely empirical knowledge, and it's may refer only to certain systems that are developed as digital tools, etc. They have nothing to do with medical devices. They will not guarantee you enough evidence to claim that from the clinical perspective, it will have any kind of impact. And I'm very sure, and maybe Sandra will complete this, I'm very sure if you present a study with just 5, it will not pass. So what happens if you don't have this number? You need to keep going. You need to find the partners and create eventually a network. You have excellent partners here, both EIT Health and HCP will help you on finding this ecosystem for you if you are doing in this direction. So yeah, there is no magic number. I don't know, Sandra, if you want to complete this, but at least this is also my learning from.
It probably depends also on the type of technologies that we're assessing.
Yeah, I'm only complementing. There is a rational number, so you have to make the rationality about the number that you're going to pick. So it depends on the diseases, it depends on the frequency of the disease, it depends on the users, the frequency of the users. So the magic here is to get the rational that I'm putting into the notified body and they accept my rationality. So this is the main point. Because if it's a rare disease, it could be only one, because I don't have more. So I have one sample, I have to go through the regulatory path with this one sample. So the magic word is rationality. So you have to give the information and make the rationality about this in order to give all these data to the notified body.
Okay, thank you. So I'll pass on to the next questions. The next one is from Jose Malta. Is it mandatory for the manufacturer to have the QMS duly certified by a certification body or just implemented?
Just implemented. The notified body is going to check your QMS. You don't have to have the certification of ISO 13485. You can have it. I think is a market issue. If it's a market issue for you, if your customers want the certification, you should do it, but it's not mandatory for the notified body because they are going to check it, and they don't want to be aware of the other certifications. They have to check it by themselves, not a certificate guarantee that your quality management system complies with the requirements that the notified body wants. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Patricia, I think you also want to add something here? This question, no? Patricia, no? Okay. So I also have another question. I think it's for Patricia as well. So is clinical evaluation also part of class 1 evaluation, or more general, are the steps you have shown needed for class 1 medical device?
All the steps are mandatory for all of the classes. Even the clinical evaluation, we should perform it even if it's for self-declared devices, is a mandatory. Of course, it depends on your competent authority that normally they ask you for that documentation if you have an issue regarding your device, but you should have it, okay? It's mandatory. All of the steps are mandatory for all the classes. Of course, class 2, 3, and class A, class B, C, and D have to show this clinical evaluation to the notified body. But class 1 and class A have to have a clinical evaluation or a performance evaluation is mandatory. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And before proceeding to the next speakers, I would also like to pose a question. So you've said, Sandra, that one of the most critical steps is step 5 about validation and testing. So I bet that this is probably where startups have the most critical obstacles. So what would you say are the most common mistakes that startups do, and now what are the best practices to overcome these problems they will face in the future? And the question is for you and both João as well.
Yeah, Celia also are going to talk about because it's one of the main difficulties. I think so, right, Celia?
Yeah, okay, so Richard.
The first error that we do is to perform the studies by ourselves within the company, because the notified body want to have a lab accreditation, okay, a lab stamp. I think this is the most common error that the manufacturer do, because in order to have this testing validated and for the notified body to accept it, we have to qualify all of the equipment, all of the personnel, all of the infrastructures, and is the most common error.
Okay, thank you. So in this case, I think the startups could use the Digital Innovation Portugal services, or ask help for assistance to experts like you and João to help them to develop those studies. Okay, thank you. On to you, Patricia, to present the next speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a very insightful session so far. So, and now we will have the next part of this webinar where we'll feature some success stories with this process. And Celia Ludovino will be the first speaker. She's the Director of Quality and Regulatory Affairs Manager at the BHL Medical. And since 2022, she has been overseeing this transition from MDD to MDR and focusing on compliance with this new regulation. Then we will have Ana Abreu. She's a specialist in regulatory affairs and quality management systems of medical devices. And she has expertise in areas ranging from IVD to MD to surgical instruments and metallic implants. And she's currently the Quality and Regulatory Affairs Manager at Kineticus Health. So I invite you, Celia, to start your presentation, and then we will move to Anna's presentation. And after these two, we'll have some time for Q&A from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry. Oh, thank you, Patricia. Can you see my screen right now? Okay.
Yeah,
so thank you for the invitation and for this opportunity for letting us share our difficulties during this regulatory transition, which has not been easy, but I think we will manage it. BHL is a medical devices company, a Portuguese manufacturer for medical devices class 1 sterile and class 2A. All activities, assembling, packaging, AO sterilization are performed in-house. So medical devices manufactured by BHL are CA marked since 2002 under MDD, and now the company is in transition phase for the European Medical Devices Regulation. So our main difficulties. So it's been a difficult transition because we have devices placed on the market with CA mark since 2002, and now we have to resubmit all the devices. So it's that you have a device on the market for more than 15 years with a history of safety use, and now you have to resubmit it just like a new device. So if you do not resubmit this device, you will be no longer able to place it on the market since 2028. So when MDR entered into force, we had lots of work coming to the company. So MDR is much more extensive than MDD. There are lots of new requirements related to safety and performance. We had to update all the existing technical documentation. So the technical documentation that existed under the MDD had to be all updated. Reports, technical sheets related to the device, and with all the guidelines coming to support the MDR. So it's necessary to be on that guidelines so you can move on. Clinical data goes more deep to prove safety and performance. We have new requirements for labeling. So the devices we have on the market with a label these labels have to be all updated because you have new requirements related to UDI. There are new symbols that need to be placed on the device. So there is an extra work for the company with all these changes. Some devices need to be reclassified under the light of the MDR, and we have a tightened post-market activity, which gives us lots of work to take care. So on the update of the technical documentation, BHL has lots of devices. We have a portfolio with almost 300 devices. So when we had a device with several variants, for instance, a high pressure line, which is a simple device and was a device under the MDD. Now, as we have several lengths for the line, we need to assure all the technical documentation for each one of these lengths. So in this example, we had one technical sheet for one device with the device characteristics, and now we started, instead of one, having 7 technical sheets for the devices. Besides, they are the same. They have differences, even it's on their length, but as the specifications for the device have to be clearly stated, we need to have one technical sheet for each one of the devices, one example of the label for each one of the devices. So as you can imagine, with almost 300 medical devices, this is not easy to manage. And we also have the information related to preclinical and clinical data, which has to be robust for the devices, much more robust than it was for the MDD. I will give an example, just like Sandra told before. Under MDD, we made a different approach related to some safety and performance for the device. We made the leachables test not using the standards for medical devices, and then for the MDR, we had to repeat all the tests because they were not accepted, because they were not made under the standard for the medical devices, for the leachables for medical devices. So as you can see, there was a lot of work with this technical documentation. Other difficulty we passed in the company was related to the availability of human resources. It was necessary to train people in the MDR. When we started this transition, there were not so many people with knowledge on the MDR. So we had to search for training to face this transition. Other point is that we had to give training inside the company so that people can be aware of the implication of this MDR. So As there are not so many people with training in this MDR, it was difficult to recruit personnel. So what have we done? We subcontracted some activities. For instance, we had the clinical evaluation subcontracted to IPN. Usability reports, the update of usability reports were also subcontracted. So this was the way we arranged to face this lack of human resources in the company to do so many things. Another point, another difficulty was related to the UDI system. So with the new requirements of the MDR, we had to change the labels to implement the UDI system on the label. So we had to find an issuing entity, which in our case is GS1 in Portugal. We had to update all the labels for each level of packaging, and imagine these for 300 devices. So each device has his own label with its own UDI, and for each level of package, we need a label for each reference for each device. With the MDR, we also needed a new equipment for UDI printing, because our machines, our packaging machines, did not allow by itself to print the UDI. So another equipment had to be acquired. So we have several costs involved in this transition related to training, as I told before, and related to the acquisition of new equipment. Also, we had the UDI validation. So all of these gave us lots of work. It's another validation, not only the ones we already had related to package, to sterilization, but also UDI had to be validated. Post-market activity was also another challenge that we faced, because we need to monitor the performance of the medical device after being on the market. And this is a snowball, because it's not just performing the post-market activity. We perform the post-market activity, and then we have to update the clinical evaluation, the risk analysis reports, the IFU, so everything is connected. And our main difficulty in this activity is to obtain the feedback from the final user, because DHL sells for distributors. Our end contact is the distributor, so it's not easy to obtain the feedback from the one who is using the device. So this has to be negotiated. We had to negotiate it with distributors so they can obtain this feedback from the market to the company. We updated even the contracts with the distributors had to be updated because of these activities related to post-market, because it also has to be a responsibility of the distributor to cooperate with the manufacturer for the post-market activity. Without them, it's too difficult. So other difficulty we passed, and not only with the MDR, but also with the MDD, is the inexistence of a Portuguese notified body. Without having a Portuguese notified body, this means extra work with the documentation. Some documentation, we need to have it in 2 different languages. Procedures that can be used in production, in warehouse, they all have to be in Portuguese and in English. In Portuguese, so the users can understand it, and in English for the auditor to be able to evaluate them. And also the inexistence of a Portuguese notified body brings more costs to the company related to the traveling of the auditors. So A certification, this is our conclusion, is that a certification under MDR is much more expensive than a certification under MDD. We have extra costs with human resources, with the training of the personnel. We have excess of work because people in the company are the same. They were trained for the MDR, but the work has to be done. All the other work that existed before the MDR. So it's necessary to have more hours available to face this transition. The acquisition of new equipment brings more costs to the company and subcontracting activities. So much more expensive to have an MDR certification than an MDD one. Our strategy to face this transition. So first, we identified all the key points for the transition, the UDI, post-market activity, and a plan was created. For us, the most important point and one of the main ones is keep in contact with the notified body, sign the contract, schedule dates for the technical documentation submission, but always keep in touch with the notified body. When we are preparing the technical documentation, if we have some doubt, contact the notified body instead of moving on without having sure that can be done. Other point was to search for help outside the company. So that's why we subcontracted that activities, because it's impossible to do everything in-house. And I think we were in a good move with our subcontracted activities. And also a great point is the teamwork. So we have to align everything we have to do with our team. So if we are all aligned, for sure, this transition will be well succeed. We are at this moment, our company is in the second round for the technical documentation submission. So with several non-conformities in the beginning, in the first round, but with the strategies defined in-house, I think we are on the good way. So our company faced this opportunity of the MDR. Besides all the costs, all the work, this was an opportunity to rethink and improve processes in the company. So we think it's even a way to win new markets. While other companies are letting it move on, we decided it's now. We cannot delay this transition. So this is an opportunity for the company to move on just right now with the MDR. So we think the positive attitude related to this MDR can turn this difficulty in an opportunity. And that's how we think about this MDR. So this was our presentation. So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions related to this.
Thank you, Celia. I suggest we move to Anna's presentation, and then we'll have a few time for the questions from the audience. Thank you.
I'll share my screen now. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share Kinetic Cell's experience in obtaining the CE marking for its product by the MDR. It was a long way and not always easy, but important thing is that we reach our goal. And finally, we have our product, Kinetic System, certified under the MDR on the market. So I'll start to make a short presentation of Kinetics Health and then of our CE market product under the MDR. And finally, I will present the 5 biggest challenges that we faced during the certification process and the strategies that we will use to overcome those challenges. So, Kinetics Health is a Portuguese digital health company founded in 2015 that develops digital solution with an evidence-based functioning toward movement disorders to support medical professionals and patients. The goal of our company is to use technology to empower people with movement disorders to take control of their health. The focus within movement disorder enables Kinetics Health to bring mobility metrics to a wide range of therapeutic areas, from neurodegenerative disorders to chronic pain or obesity. Right now, we only have one product on the market, different from the situation of VHL. Our CE market product is Kinetic System, is a software as a medical device, risk class 2A, that helps to assist healthcare providers and patients in the management of Parkinson's disease through an evidence-based clinical platform, Kinetics platform, and a smartphone application, mKinetics. This product was designed with the needs of patients and of the healthcare professionals in mind. It provides real-time data on patients' mobility through the use of the application on a smartphone. This way allowing healthcare providers to adjust treatment plans and support patients remotely using the platform. And it is available on the market since June 2023. So the first big challenge that Kinetics Health faced, it was the selection of the notified body. In 2021, when Kinetics decided to certify its product, there were very few notified bodies designated under the MDR when compared to the number of manufacturers that need to submit a new certification process to introduce a new product in the market, or even some manufacturers want to change of notified body because their current one decided not to move forward with the MDR accreditation process, or even because the accreditation process was not expected to end before the final date of transition between MDD and MDR. So the first notified bodies that were designated under the MDR had lack of resources to accept new applications and give their priority to the companies that were already clients. So in order to overcome this issue, Kinetics began by identifying the codes associated with its product, consulting the MDCG 2019-14. And after that, consulted the webpage of the European Commission with notified bodies information handle to select the notified bodies with the scope of designation with the codes applicable to Kinetic System. Several entities were contacted then to send us codes indicating beside the price how long the certification process would take. Currently, prices applied by notified bodies are public available, which makes all this process of quoting more transparent and clear. At the time, some prices that were charged were exorbitant. It was very difficult to a small company to have a certification. Kinetics selected the notified body that presented the best relationship between price and certification time. In our case, it was too violent. The second challenge, it was apply the MDR requirements to a software as a medical device. And in my opinion, for me, it is still a big challenge. For example, simple details in other products, like, for example, where to put the label, in a software, it is almost an imagination exercise. In our case, the information is immediately when the application or the platform is open. Although this is not our case, sometimes defining the risk class, it's also a big challenge. This is a topic that has been discussed a lot on social media in recent times. Sometimes it's not so easy to understand if the software is a class 1, class 2A, or if it is a medical device itself. In our case, Kinetic System is, without any doubt, a class 2A due to its intended use. So, according to the MDR, a software label did not need to bear a barcode or a QR code, but a UDI API is still necessary. So, it was necessary to check what parameters could be applicable to software to define the UDI API of Kinetic System. Other question raised was how to provide instructions for use with the product, since Kinetic System is not a conventional product. Kinetics chose to make the user manual available on the website in PDF and in the software itself in online hyperlink available in the application in the platform. To help us with these questions, Kinetics consulted IPN team that with all its expertise helped us to clarify the doubts that arose during the certification process. Related with UDI, I would like to take this opportunity also to highlight the availability of GS1 Portuguese team when consulted with any question. GS1 was also the entity that Kinetics selected to issue the UDI codes. Beside consultation of external entities, all the collaborators involved in the design of the product and in the regulatory affairs area had training with contents related with certification of software under the MDR. Other strategy followed by Kinetics was to perform the internal audits with auditors with knowledge and experience in the MDR. This way, we intended to detect possible differences between the requirements of ISO 13485 and also the requirements for the KMS indicated in the MDR in Article 10. So the third challenge was getting clinical evidence for our product. With the entry into force of the MDR, more rigorous procedures for obtaining clinical data of the medical devices emerged. Since it was not possible to establish equivalence with similar products, Kinetics started a clinical investigation with Kinetic System. So Kinetics developed 2 clinical studies that were prepared and performed prior to the start of the MDR certification process. The study protocols were prepared in accordance with safety and health standards for the participants, namely with submission of all documentation to an ethics committee so that they could be evaluated. The 2 studies were validation of quantitative gait analysis systems for Parkinson's disease for use in supervised and unsupervised environments, and feasibility and usability of a mobile-based continuous and objective real-life measures of movement in patients with Parkinson's disease. The first challenge was preparing the technical documentation. This was the first experience of Kinetics team in preparing technical documentation of a product under the MDR. So it was necessary to understand how the MDR requirements could be applied to a software. Without help of many orientations, as in 2021, not many guidelines had yet been published about a software. Also, it was necessary to make a revision to the KMS documentation to include all the MDR KMS requirements indicated in Article 10. Also, it was necessary to review the documentation due to the harmonization of some standards that are applied to Kinetics products, namely ISO 14971, risk management applicable to medical devices, and the ISO 15223 part 1 with the symbols used in labeling. This was a very extensive work that took some months to be completed. So to overcome these questions, it was performed a gap analysis to evaluate what information was missing in the existing documentation. It was performed also gap analysis to determine what documentation was missing to comply with the MDR requirements. And during the preparation of the technical documentation, we consulted IPN to help us. Also, all the collaborators working in documentation had training with contents related with preparation of technical documentation for MDR. And once again, Kinetics Health selected internal auditors with experience and training in the MDR to detect all the gaps. So the last challenge was the duration of the certification process. In October 2021, it was performed the stage 1 audit to determine the readiness of Kinetics for the stage 2 audit, also known as certification audit. Some observations were raised at the time that needed to be solved before the next audit. In February 2022 was carried out the certification audit, and Kinetics got the recommendation for the ISO 13485 certification in October 2022. At the same time, the technical documentation was being reviewed. We received 3 rounds of questions for the technical assessor and the other 3 rounds of questions from the clinical assessor, being the last one received in March 2023, with Kinetics obtaining the recommendation for CE marking in June 2023. That is 20 months, almost 2 years after the beginning of the process. So it was therefore a quite extensive process from the moment the company decided to place the CE marking on its product until the moment it was authorized to market it. About the strategy followed, there wasn't much the company could do to speed up all this process. It was, in our side, it was only possible to try to answer all the questions as quickly as possible and contact the notified body to understand what stage the documentation review was at. So this was the resume of Kinetics Health experience until obtaining the CE marking of Kinetics system. I hope this sharing, it has been helpful to you. Thank you for your attention. I don't know if you have any question.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for presentation, and you too, Celia. So we can now proceed to our questions. We do have here a very long question. I will briefly. So can you see it on the chat as well? But I can read it for all the audience. So there's a participant here that has a question that has a software. So their software provides a response to the entire drug circuit, including the processes involving in the nursing, medical, and pharmaceutical areas. And we are in the market for more than 30 years. So our main questions are whether we will have to create and change all the technical documentation relating to the last 30 years of development, or consider the beginning of the software development as the current moment, and consider from now on the new procedures and technical documentation necessary and required by the standard. So who would like to answer this question? Is this particular?
I don't know if I think I'm the right person to do
Maybe yes.
this answer. We cannot change the history of the device. Okay, so this is the main point. If you have the device for almost 30 years, you have it for almost 30 years. So we cannot change the history of the device. But if you want to give them a different purpose, okay, or a different intended use, then we can make it a little bit different approach and give them a new phase. And then we can start a new technical documentation and put the other software as a history, a previous generation of the software. So we can have this strategy. We have to think well about the strategy, if we are going to put enough changes in order to give them a new face, but we cannot delete the history of the software. So the answer is maybe. You have to think about it. It's possible, but we cannot delete the history of the device, okay?
Okay, so I think that partially responds to the second part of the question, but I can read it also to you. So do we have to document all the processes relating to the development of this entire drug circuit in detail for certification submission, or whether it will be enough to submit documentation relating only to what we consider to be the critical processes, such as medication dose calculations, generation of doses for administration in nursing, dose alarming, and information on drug interactions. So these are very specific.
Yeah, that is my main point in the answering. So I have to know a little bit more about the device to give you a straightforward answer. Nevertheless, the main topic here is you have to describe all of the module softwares and describe the ones that are medical device. And this is not the main critical point. You have to describe all of the medical device or all of the modules that are linked to the medical device regulation. The other ones you can skip. You can tell about it. It exists, but it's not a medical device, so I have not to describe it into the medical device technical documentation. But I have to have more information about it. But yes, you can skip some parts that are not medical device. The other ones I have to describe it entirely, not the critical part. You have to describe all. And this is the main point here. I don't know if you have some advice also, Anna or Celia, but yeah, we have to describe it in detail, all the process. We cannot skip.
So what I would recommend that maybe this person could apply to the DGL Portugal platforms and then reach out to the your services to help them to clarify all these questions, maybe. So I also have here another question. So this one is for Ana Abreu. How many people worked at Kineticus Health in the implementation of the MDR?
In the regulatory affairs directly, 2. But we have two persons that help for the clinical investigation design and definition of protocols, and also the help of IPN during the process.
So this was a team effort, and it took at least 2 persons on the whole process. Okay, so I also have another question for you. So seeing that there is a ever-evolving landscape on this medical device regulations, so what do you see as the key priorities or focus areas for maintaining compliance and addressing future regulatory challenges, since everything is always changing?
I think this is an Abreu, okay.
No, it could, I mean, if someone else has the answer, please.
I think we have always been consulting all the European Commission platforms, and LinkedIn is a very useful tool also. And I think as Celia mentioned, do not forget that PMES, risk management, clinical evaluation are all connected. So we have our mindset is not to stop when we finish a document, because it's not when the process ends. It never ends. So I think our mindset has to be that one.
Okay, so thank you. Sandra, you want
to just say something?
Yes, Celia, please.
For me, the technical documentation is never concluded. Okay, it's an ongoing process. You need to have it updated. You have to be aware of guidelines, of standards that are being released. So I think this is the main point. You have to be aware, you have to understand what is applicable or not to your device, and you have to keep updating all your technical documentation, because a new standard is released, you need to update a report, and then you have to update the technical documentation. You receive you have an incident report, you have to update your risk management files, you have to update your IFU. So this is a never-ending process, I would say, with the technical documentation.
Thank you, Celia. Sandra, you also would like to add something?
I have nothing more to say, because they are the ones that are dealing with this every day. And I think that is the main point. The strategy, the regulatory path is never ending. So you have to have dedicated persons. Sometimes you have to ask for help in order to be compliant and fully compliant. The notified body is always putting the eyes on you. So this is the main thing that you have to be aware of. So be aware and be always sharing the information with each other, create groups, share your history. So we are a team here, and we are available for you, and all of the companies should be aware that we cannot go through this all by ourselves. And I'm always learning from my clients and from my company colleagues. So please be aware that we are a team here, and we deal with all the struggles every day. So that is my overview.
Okay, so we know that at the European level, there are several think tanks and forums where people can reach out to have more information. Do you have anyone that a special think tank or forum that you would suggest for people to reach out?
I think the Anna said the one of the good tools is the LinkedIn. So if you are linked with the right groups, normally we are going to get all this information at real time, and we can deal with different information regarding not only with our market, because normally we are going to learn with other markets. So I think the LinkedIn is one of the best tools for and it's free. Okay, that is the best tool for getting and be aware and updated with all these major guidelines and standards.
Okay, thank you. I do have another question. This one is for Celia. So how did the transition to compliance with European regulation of 2017 745 impact your organization product development, manufacturing process, or market access strategies? You're muted, Celia.
You're muted.
Celia, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Marta, you have to repeat, please, because
yes. So
I cannot see the question.
No, it's not on the chat. I can put it there, but I see how did the transition to compliance with European regulation from 2017 745 impact your organization product development, manufacturing processes, or market access strategies?
At this moment, we are not developing devices, so it's impossible to develop a new device just right now. So we are trying to win new markets, but outside Europe. This is our point now, because with this MDR transition, we haven't gone to other markets in Europe. Okay, so outside Europe, we started with an FDA, a 510(k) submission, so different registrations, okay, but not under the MDR.
Okay,
I'm not sure if this answered the question.
Yes.
Okay.
So before handing on to Patricia, because we are already on time, so I would like to thank everyone and mention again the João Quinta mentioned here the EIT Health Bootcamp for Regulatory Pathways from EIT Health. You can reach out to our webpage, and if you want to know more and learn more about all these processes, you can register for this bootcamp. I think the call is now open, so you can call. So and on to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Marta, and thank you all once again for sharing this important insights and your experience. I think this was a very comprehensive session. On one side with this presentation from IPN on the regulatory requirements, but also these two very interesting success stories where we saw that this is clearly not a simple process, but I guess the main takeaways were that it is possible, but probably we'll have to seek for help of the right experts and also have the right partners engaged. And that this is an evolving and dynamic process. So the regulation is also changing, and it makes sense that it does. So I hope this has gave all participants some important information and insights on how to further pursue their tasks in certification, if that is the case. So now to the participants, thank you so much for attending this webinar, and I hope you found it relevant for your activity. And just before we close this session, just a couple of notes. So again, and regarding our Digital Innovation Hub, JoinHealth PT, there are a number of services that you may benefit from if you're an SME or even a public sector organization. So I invite you to check this project on our website. And also I invite you to follow the Health Cluster Portugal and EIT Health through our online platforms and social networks, where you can know more about these and other activities that we're promoting. And lastly, I invite you to check our next webinars of this series. So you can do that. And I ask if Daniela could please put up the slide where we can share this QR code. And you can check this QR code to see which webinars will have more on this series. So the next one will be in 1 week from now about how to get your digital therapeutics reimbursed in Europe. We will have the French and the Belgian frameworks explained. So registration is free for all these webinars, but it's mandatory. So we invite you to join us for another exciting webinar next week. So thank you so much and see you soon.
Right.
Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Yes,